One of the questions I get in my Affinity classes is about which of the repair tools in Affinity Photo to use for a given repair. And sometimes it's hard to understand which one is best for a given job. So I thought I'd shoot a quick video. I'm going to show you how I'd use those on this image. I was out taking a picture of my fence and the stupid owl landed on my fence. No, seriously, I'm just kidding. But I do have these nails here. This owl landed, it was raining, you can see all the rain in the background. And it was where it was. Grab the camera, walk outside. But it's sitting right next to these nails that had been driven into the fence as a way to run a level line when a fence repair was done. How can we take those out? So there's 5 or 6 different repair tools in Affinity. Once upon a time, there was the clone brush, clone stamp tool. And this is kind of the original image repair tool. And I'm going to go ahead and use it right now. The clone tool uses the brush settings. So if I go up here to width, I can change the size of that. You can see it's getting bigger. I can also use the right and left square bracket to change its size. And it will obey things like the opacity and the hardness. So in this case, I'm going to show you a really simple repair, naive repair if you will. I'm going to use the Alt Option key on my Mac or the Alt key on Windows to set my source point. So I hold that down and click. You see a little crosshair shows up there. And now if you notice as my mouse moves, I'm not clicking, but you can see it showing me in real time what it's going to do. So I'm just going to do this and I'm just going to paint that out. So if I want to put the source point somewhere new, I can Alt click again and I can try to do that, bring that in here. So one thing you should be noticing, I'm going to zoom in on that spot. If I clone from here and I clone here, for example, it's fairly obvious. In this image, it's not terrible because the background is so out of focus. One way you can blend that in is by changing your opacity in your flow. I'm just going to change the opacity. And I'm going to set my source point right here, and I'm just going to kind of bring this way. And now I'm going to bring my flow down, which will make it even more feathered in, make my point bigger. And that lets me kind of blend across there. I can come back from this other side and do kind of the same thing. And you can think of this as sort of a cloning smudge. Now, if I zoom out, you're not going to be able to tell I did that, but if I zoom in, you can see in the noise right here, I basically smoothed the noise out in the background. We normally think a noise is a bad thing, but if you remove the noise from an area that noise would exist, such as the background here, this was shot at fairly high ISO because it was completely overcast, anyone who looks close is going to see that. So that's one of the problems with using the simple clone tool. The other problem is what you see down here. We've got this edge where I've got a humanly recognizable structure, and I don't have a good source for it. So if I go to the right, this is less in focus, so it's not as sharp. And if I go to the left, I've got talons. And also, this is more in focus. So there's not a real obvious place to clone from to fix this. And I could spend a lot of time, trying to clean this up and then blend it in. So this is the clone tool. It's not intelligent. It's really, really, really just a simple copy and paste, essentially, in the image. But it's using your brush settings. So you can do some blending, and there's times when it's useful. But it is not the most powerful tool that Affinity offers by any long shot. So I'm going to leave that for there. I'm going to go down here to this area, and this is the repair tools area. If you see that this little down arrow right here that's next to some of these, see that right there? That means if you click and hold on it, a menu will pop up. And what you see there is whatever tool was on top last. It's like a deck of cards. Whichever one you were using last goes on top. So I was last time using the Blemish removal tool. So now I'm going to go to the heal tool. And the heal tool is normally thought of as something to repair skin. But it works really well on any texture because it's basically a texture clone with color and tone blending. So what that means is it'll try to bring the texture in from the area where you set the source point, and it'll try to match the color and tone being brightness, of the area you're in. So let's see what that does. Let's just play with it. So I'm going to set my source point over here this time, and actually I'm going to do something I normally do when I do cloning or anything that uses a source point. I'm going to set it on the edge. And you'll notice, you can see it's previewing what's going to happen when I click. So by setting that there, I can put this right here and then do this. And you'll see my brush, I got a little bit over here. So I'm going to go ahead and reset a new source point and make my brush smaller using the square brackets again and take that out. Now, that was really easy. And the fact that I healed from this area right here that had a little bit more red color, didn't matter because the heel brush, as I painted, blended it into that background. It also, if you'll notice, kept most of the noise, so it's not super obvious there was a repair there. So if I zoom out full image and I go back to my regular cursor so that I get rid of the source point, you wouldn't know that's there unless you were really pixel peeping, right? And I'm not, this has got a lot of noise because of the ISO, so I'm not going to print this 40 inches wide because you'd be able to look this close. I'm going to print it to where it's a foot wide or 2 feet wide. And certainly on something like Facebook or with some more aggressive noise reduction, it wouldn't be a problem at all. So that's the heel tool. So let's put all that back. Now I want to show you the patch tool. And I don't use the patch tool all that often, but it works fairly similar to the heel tool, except instead of brushing it in and using a source point and brushing from the source point and the brush settings, we use a selection. And it uses the normal Affinity selection up here at New, Add, Subtract. I made that a little bit bigger than it needed to be, so I'm just going to pare it down a little bit so I don't have to worry about having as big a source area. And you can see as I drag my mouse around the image, it's literally trying to patch it from those areas. And if you notice, like on these feathers, the highlights have kind of blown out and the darks have gotten brighter. Well, it's trying to blend the tone and color of that source area into the background, which doesn't work very well in this case because they're so different. But if I go over here and I click, you notice it picks that area and then it does the blend, and that is pretty damn seamless if you look at it. So if I go back all the way out, but even pixel peeping. So one trick to see halos, defects, things like that is to zoom way out and look at it as a thumbnail because they often show up there. It's also to zoom all the way in. And you can see, you might think that is, but that could very well be the way it eventually looked. Pretty good. So the patch tool can be used instead of the heel tool. It's really just a matter of which process you like better and if you have a large source area. So if you're making a large patch, so if I was removing this much of the image, that patch tool might be really hard. So let's just say I was going to patch an area this big. The patch tool would be really tough because I need an entire area of source for that. Whereas in the heel tool, I can reset my source point and keep using kind of a small source area over a larger area and spread it out. Which you want to use is really up to you. They work fairly similar. Let's put all that back. So that was the patch tool. The blemish removal tool is really designed for spot cleaning. So it obeys one thing, which is basically the width. And this is almost like the dust removal tool, the spot dust removal tool in Capture One or the dust removal tool in Lightroom. It's really just a little clone point. So if I hit here and then drag, what I've said is repair what's inside the circle using this area over here. Let me try that again. So I click and hold and then drag, and wherever I drag to while I'm holding that mouse, it tries to blend in there. It's basically a fixed size version of the patch tool. So these nails, this is not really a tool designed to fix these nails, and you can see it's not doing a great job on it. Okay, so this is not a tool for this. What this is a tool for, let's say I wanted to get rid of all this rain. Let's say I wanted it to look like it wasn't raining. I can take this tool and go through piece by piece. So this works really well on things like pimples, blemishes, dust spots, a little piece of garbage in the background, things like that. It's a really convenient tool to remove because it's like a one-click tool, and you can make your brush bigger with the square brackets or by dragging the width up here, up and down. So I could, for example, make my brush this big and try to patch this with this. This is not really the right tool to do it. And that repair is fairly obvious because the texture, you can see the quality of that next fence post over is out of focus, and so the noise has changed dramatically, and it didn't do a great job blending it in. It's not really a tool for that kind of repair. It's a tool for doing spots. But for spots, it's brilliant. So now we're going to get to the tool that is probably my favorite tool in Affinity, and it's the inpainting brush. The inpainting brush is a context-aware or surroundings-aware tool that tries to fill in the area you're painting over intelligently. So let's just try it. And these nails won't really do it justice. They're pretty easy to remove other ways. But if I do that, let's see what it does. And sometimes it gets it right and sometimes it gets it wrong. So you can see it did not bring in the bottom of the thing. So I'm just going to paint over the top, take the shadow it left in, and then I'm going to do this. And if it does it right, crossing fingers, so it didn't do it right. So one thing about the inpainting tool is sometimes it's brilliant and sometimes it's not brilliant. So let me show you an example of using it in a really silly way. All right, so I didn't want this owl in my stupid picture of the fence. So let's take the owl out. Now, it's not going to get this 100% right. I'm taking out like a third of the picture. And you saw with the nails, a lot of times on things like edges that have kind of human meaning, it doesn't do a great job. So it's going to take it a second. So what it's doing during this calculation period is it's trying to calculate what would be behind this owl if the owl wasn't there by looking at what's around it. So it should, for example, pull in this tree. It might or might not. It should pull in this dark tree part, trunk of the tree. What it'll do in this area, who knows? It's going to have to try to guess what's back there. And then on top of the fence, it may do a poor job. And I also didn't do a super clean job selecting it. So this tip of the wing is not fully in the selection. You can see it's kind of, the red's kind of faded out. His talons are not fully in the selection. They're kind of faded out as well. So we'll see what it does. Where you see this ghosting on the outside edge is because my brush, the inpaint tool obeys the brush settings, and I've got a very soft brush. So there was obviously some here, but this is an incremental thing. It brought the fence up here. We got some edges. So I'm going to clean this up super quick. I don't really want to remove the owl from this picture, but I think it's instructive to see what a tool like this does. And I often use inpainting as a starting point for more detailed repair. Trying to, by hand, fill in all this background texture, even though it's completely out of focus from other areas of the image, is going to be very, very time-consuming and tedious, and probably impossible, or at least I'm not really willing to do it. Where you see the owl kind of bleeding through still is where I didn't have a full selection, so a more careful selection of the owl would actually do a better job in this. So... And this is clearly a processor-intensive activity. And let's deal with this chunk of fence that left up here. So I'm going to try to be really careful and make sure I get that fully painted in. And you can see it doesn't always necessarily get it 100% right every time, but if you just keep doing it, eventually you'll kind of reach a stalemate with the computer. And when you hit that point, I usually fall back to other tools. So like, for example, if it puts more fence back here because for whatever reason it's decided that this belongs up here, I'm going to, it's getting a little better. I'm going to go to the clone stamp tool. So I said you can use this in combination. And I'm not really worried about blending it exactly at this moment because what I'm really doing here is I'm just doing a first draft. It's like roughing things in construction. And then I might go back and do a little bit more intelligent repair. I'm not going to do a full repair on this because A, I don't want to remove the owl, but two, a repair of this magnitude takes a lot of time. So you can see it didn't do a great job down here with the fence, right? It doesn't understand that the top of the fence needs to be a line that has this repeating pattern. Sometimes it does a good job, sometimes it doesn't. And so you just need to kind of go back and forth with it. This is a case where I might try to see if I had another image in the series where I had a section of fence I could try to bring in here and put on top of there, or work using this left-hand side as a source for cloning into here. So that's inpainting. The final cleanup tool is red eye removal. And I'm not even going to talk about red eye removal because if you have red eye, you're using your flash wrong. And I will encourage you to do a little bit of learning about off-camera lighting and not use on-camera flash because it looks terrible. So there are the repair tools. Hopefully that little demo gives you a little better idea of when to use each. And more than that, realize that you can go back and forth between them in one repair. So you can start with the inpainting tool, which is what I do very frequently, as a way to start a repair. And the more precise you are with your selections, let me just show you that. I'm gonna make this a little harder. So before I do this really soft, I'm going to make this really hard. Got to be on the right layer. So you can see that's got a really hard edge. but it's letting me not get a lot of the fence. And so I'm basically telling the inpaint tool to be more careful. And now I can go back and I'm going to use the heal brush tool, and I'm going to set my source point just to the right of that. I'm just going to fix the top edge of that fence. Ta-da. So you can see by combining these, this repair didn't really need to be combined that way, but you can do more complicated things by using the tools sort of back and forth in a cyclic manner. Hopefully that makes it a little more clear which tool to use, or at least gives you a basis to make the decision. One other note, if the audio sounds really echoey, it's because our AV gear was stolen. Someone decided to help themselves to my recording gear. And so I'm using the computer's internal microphone in a room that's a little echoey. So I apologize for that. Hopefully we'll have that fixed as soon as the insurance claim gets through. So until next time, check you later.